Good morning, everyone. Boker Tov, a happy Friday to you, and a happy Yom Yerushalayim. Today is the 28th day of the Hebrew month of Iyar, and it is the 53rd anniversary of the reunification of Jerusalem. So, Yom Yerushalayim Sameach to everyone out there. Welcome back to Tricks of the Trope. This is our last class in a four-part series studying our cantillation symbols, our trope symbols that we find in the Hebrew Bible. We spent the first two classes talking about Torah trope, how we go about chanting and reading the symbols above and below the words in our Torah, the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible. And then last week we started looking at how we chant those symbols for Haftarah. So as a reminder, the Haftarah is a selection from our book of Nevi'im, the second large collection of books in the Bible. So Tanakh, Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim, so book of prophets, Nevi'im. And a Haftarah portion is a selection from the book of Nevi'im that is read on a Shabbat morning or a festival morning or high holidays or other times during the year when we do read the Torah as well. And whenever we chant the Haftarah, it's going to have a separate melody using the same trope symbols as we have for Torah. So that's what I want to focus on today, reviewing what we did last week, and then also going over the blessings as well for the Haftarah as well. So as a reminder, the main page that we are using is on our Cyber Mitzvah website, cybermitzvah.sinaitemple.org, where you can find all of the recordings for the blessings that we use, in addition to all of the trope symbols as well. So I'm going to start by going down to Haftarah Trope, and we're going to review the 4 trope phrases that we went over yesterday. We're going to add maybe 1 or 2 more today, and then I'm going to spend the rest of the time applying that trope to our Haftarah blessings, and then also to a Haftarah portion as well. Okay, so to review, Haftarah Trope, using our regular phrases that we've learned for Torah Trope, goes like this. Mercha tibecha munach et nachta. Your turn. Mercha tibecha munach et nachta. Second line. Tibecha munach et nachta. Your turn. Tibecha munach et nachta. Line 3. Mercha tibecha et nachta. Mercha tibecha et nachta. And line 4. Tibecha et nachta. Your turn. Tibecha et nachta. Okay, kol hakavod. That is our et nachta phrases. Let's move on to sof pasuk. Again, review from last week. Mercha tibecha mercha sof pasuk. Your turn. Mercha tibecha mercha sof pasuk. Line 2. Tibecha mercha sof pasuk. Tibecha mercha sof pasuk. Line 3. Mercha tibecha sof pasuk. Your turn. Mercha tibecha sof pasuk. And line 4. Tibecha sof pasuk. Your turn. Tibecha sof pasuk. Kol hakavod. On to katon phrases. Mapach pashta munach katon. Your turn. Mapach pashta munach katon. Line 2. Pashta munach katon. Pashta munach katon. Line 3. Munach katon. Munach katon. Line 4. Mapach pashta katon. Your turn. Mapach pashta katon. And line 5. Pashta katon. Pashta katon. Kol hakavod. All right, as a reminder, our 4th group is Kadma. It's an extension of katon phrases with when we add 1 trope to the beginning of the phrase Kadma. Kadma can appear in front of a few different phrases, but most commonly you're going to find it here in front of katon. It goes like this. Kadma mapach pashta munach katon. Kadma mapach pashta munach katon. And line 2. Kadma mapach pashta katon. Your turn. Kadma mapach pashta katon. Kol hakavod. Okay, we're going to learn 2 new trope groups today. The first one is going to be Revi'i. Okay? And as a reminder, we've color-coded all of the trope phrases, or most of the trope phrases here on our Sinai Temple website to help you kind of distinguish one group from another. So you can kind of look, if we highlight the tropes on an actual Haftarah portion, you can be like, okay, this is Et Nachta, I'll highlight in pink. It's Sof Pasuk, I'll highlight in orange, Katon yellow, so on and so forth. So our blue phrases will be Revi'i. It goes like this. Kadma ve'azla munach revi'i. Your turn. Kadma ve'azla munach revi'i. Line 2. Kadma ve'azla revi'i. Kadma ve'azla revi'i. Line 3. Munach revi'i. Munach revi'i. And line 4. Munach revi'i. Munach revi'i. So this special munach on line 4 is has its own melody when it's followed by another munach and a revi'i, and especially when it's followed by this other trope, which is a little vertical line here. It's called a psik. So it's its own trope, but it has the munach gets a special melody whenever it comes before the psik in front of a revi'i. Kind of an interesting phrase. All right, and on to tevir, the last one that we will do today. It goes like this. Darga tevir. Your turn. Darga tevir. Line 2. Mercha tevir. Mercha tevir. And line 3. Tevir. Your turn. Tevir. All right. Kol hakavod. What I want to do now is go over the blessing before the Haftarah. So whenever we chant a Haftarah portion, this blessing right here on the screen is going to be chanted before we chant the specific portion, and then we also have another blessing that is chanted afterwards as well. And what's special about the blessing before the Haftarah is that traditionally it is chanted according to the same system of Haftarah cancellation. So if you notice, above and below each word of the blessing before the Haftarah, we have a trope symbol. And this is a really good way to practice your own Haftarah trope, to work on it, and to also, when we are going to chant a Haftarah in services, to remind yourself of what the melody is going to be for Haftarah trope before you get a chance to chant the actual portion. So really wonderful how our ancestors and rabbis put together the text and added the trope to it too, to make sure that we'd be able to remind ourselves of the melody and practice it basically before we get a chance to read the Haftarah portion, okay? So let's go ahead and look at the trope symbols above and below each word, and let's identify what we have. So this is a Kadma, then we have a Mapach, Pashta, another Pashta, Munach, Katon. Now a couple things to point out on the first line. Kadma and Pashta look alike. Remember what's the difference? Location, location, location. Pashta will always be at the end of a Hebrew word, and Kadma will be in the middle. They also serve different purposes. Remember, a Kadma is going to be a conjunctive trope. It's going to move us into the next trope, and a Pashta is a disjunctive. It can kind of exist more along the lines of by itself. Now, on the word Eloheinu, you notice that we have what looks like a Kadma and then another Pashta. Could be a little confusing, but since we see the trope at the end of the Hebrew word, it is a Pashta. However, the Pashta is repeated above the syllable that has the accent. As I said in our first few lessons, Trope is not only here to tell us what the melody is, but it's also there to show us where we put the accent on the syllable, okay? So the word is not Eloheinu, the word is Eloheinu. So that's why we have a repetition in the Haftarah Trope, Eloheinu, as opposed to Eloheinu, okay? So if I were to read this prayer, looking at the trope symbols, putting the accent in the right place, it would go like this. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Ha'olam. Okay? Let's look at the next tropes. We have another Mapach, Pashta, Munach, Katon. Okay? So in the first two lines of the blessing before the Haftarah, we have a Kadma phrase and then a Katon phrase. Okay? So we had Kadma Mapach, Pashta. We have another Pashta, Pashta, Munach, Katon. See? Kadma Mapach, Pashta, Pashta, Munach, Katon. Then the second line, we have the variation. I believe it's actually a full Katon phrase of line 1. Mapach Pashta Munach Katon. Here it is. Mapach Pashta Munach Katon. Okay, third line we have a Mircha, Tipecha, Munach, Et Nachta. And that, of course, is our Et Nachta phrase, right? So let's look at that. That's a full Et Nachta phrase. That's going to be over here on phrase 1. Goes like this. Mercha tipecha munach et nachta. Mercha tipecha munach et nachta. Okay? And then we have our new Revi'i phrases. Okay? We have line 2 of Revi'i. Kadma ve'azla Revi'i. Right here. Kadma ve'azla Revi'i. Then we have another Katon phrase. Mapach pashta munach Katon. Another Katon phrase. Munach Katon. And now we're going to end the entire blessing, and in fact the entire sentence, with a Sof Pasuk phrase. So the same is true here. Every single verse in the Torah or Haftarah or throughout the Hebrew Bible will end with a Sof Pasuk phrase. Mercha tipecha Sof Pasuk. Okay? And as a reminder, that was, I believe, line 3 of Sof Pasuk. Am I right? Yes. Mercha tipecha Sof Pasuk. So you see what we're doing here? We're looking at, in this case, the blessing before the Haftarah, but this could be true for any Haftarah portion as well. We're looking to identify trope phrases and separate them out between the different trope phrases, chanting each phrase by itself with the melody first, as we just did. And then once we've identified all the trope phrases and have the melody mastered, then we can start to add the Hebrew text on top of the trope to put together and make a complete blessing, in this case, or a complete Haftarah reading in the case 2, okay? So it goes like this. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nevi'im tovim veratza v'divreihem hane'emarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'Torah uveMoshe avdo uveYisrael amo uvinevi'ei ha'emet v'tzedek. And there we have it. That is the blessing before the Haftarah, chanted very helpfully with the help of Haftarah cantillation. Okay, what I want to also give you a chance to do right now is to show you how we chant the blessings after the Haftarah. Okay, so in our tradition, we do the full traditional Haftarah blessing. I know oftentimes in Reform Judaism, they only will do the first two, I believe, and then the last one. But we're going to learn the full blessing after the Haftarah. Now, what we have over here in our own Sinai Temple version are little arrows and lines that kind of remind us of the melody. This is not trope or cantillation because this prayer is not chanted according to Haftarah, trope, or cantillation. So we've kind of included these little gray lines to help remind us where the melody goes up and then down and other things to kind of remind us as well. So here's how the blessing after the Haftarah goes. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Tzur kol haolamim Tzadik bechol hadorot Ha'el ha'ne'eman Ha'omer ve'oseh Ha'medaber u'mekayim Shekol devarav emet v'tzedek Ne'eman atahu Adonai Eloheinu Ve'ne'emanim devarecha Ve'davar echad midevarecha Achol lo yashuv reikam Ki el melech ne'eman Ve'rachaman ata Baruch ata Adonai Ha'el ha'ne'eman bechol devarav. Paragraph 3. Rachem al Zion ki hi beit chayenu ve'la'aluvat nefesh toshia bimheira ve'yameinu Baruch ata Adonai mesameach Zion bevaneha. Paragraph number 4. Samecheinu Adonai Eloheinu be'Eliyahu hanavi avdecha uvemalchut beit David meshichecha bimheira yavo ve'yagel libenu al kis'o lo yeshev zar ve'lo yinchalu od acherim et kevodo ki v'shem kodshecha nishbata lo shelo yichbenei le'olam meva'ed Baruch ata Adonai Magen David al haTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al ha'nevi'im ve'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh שנתת לנו, אדוני אלוהינו, לקדושה ולמנוחה, לכבוד ולתפארת. Last paragraph. על הכל, אדוני אלוהינו, אנחנו מודים לך, ומברכים אותך, יתברך שמך, בפי כל חי, תמיד לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני, מקדש השבת. And that is the blessing after the Haftarah. As a reminder, if you need help reviewing the melody on our Cyber Mitzvah website, you can click on the play button at the very top, and I will sing the prayers to you 24/7, or 24/6 if you wish. Okay, so that is the blessing after the Haftarah as well. What I want to do now with the remainder of our time is to look at the Haftarah portion that we were studying last week, which is the Haftarah for Shabbat Machar Chodesh. In other words, when a Shabbat falls on the last day of a Hebrew month, or on the 29th day of a Hebrew month when there are 30 days in the Hebrew month. In other words, the day after we chant this Haftarah will be Rosh Chodesh. So this Haftarah will take precedence over any other Haftarah and will be chanted in the stead of the Haftarah that's normally chanted in association with the Torah portion or holiday portion that day. Just Torah portion. The holiday portions are always going to be what they are. All right. So we're going to do this again. Merchati becha munachet nachta. This one is one we didn't go over, but just in case you want to know, it's Zakef gadol Mercha tipecha sof pasuk. Then we have Pashta munach katon, Pashta katon, Mercha tipecha munachet nachta, Munach katon, Tipecha mercha sof pasuk. And one more reminder that whenever you see two Hebrew words that are connected with a dash, they are treated as one word and will only have one trope. Okay, so we did those two verses last time. Let's look for a verse here that's going to have maybe a little bit more variation. Okay, let's look at verse 21. Okay, there's one or two tropes here that we haven't done yet, but we've done most of them. Pashta munach katon, tibecha munachet nachta. This is Special Tropes 1. It's Tlisha ketana. But this one we just did. Kadma ve'azla. Mercha munach revi'i. Darga tevir, mercha tevir, mercha tipecha sof pasuk. All right, so we have a little bit of a curveball in here. We had kadma ve'azla, and we would normally expect with kadma ve'azla, what we would expect? We'd expect maybe munach revi'i, right? When we're talking about revi'i phrases. We had Kadma ve'azla, munach revi'i, right? Kadma ve'azla, munach revi'i. But then here, we had Kadma ve'azla, and then a random mercha. What's that doing? We had Kadma ve'azla, mercha, and then we had munach revi'i. So it's kind of a combination between phrase 1 and phrase 4. So as I said before, the trope phrases that we learn are not going to be fully all-encompassing to what we have in our Haftarah portions, because there are just way too many combinations, and we try and distill it down to the most common permutations of what you're going to see with trope. So the key is to understand the trope and the melodies, and then to apply it. So what did I do here? I just used the melody for mercha, right, for hine. So I would do Omar lanar, hine hachitzim, mimecha vahena. And then darga tevir, kachenu vavoa, ki shalom lecha, ve'ein davar chai Adonai. All right, good. So this is not something that we're going to absorb overnight, obviously. This is something that takes a lot of practice and study, but I've given you the tools to be able to learn it and work on it on your own, and to practice with your own Haftarah portions. One last thing that I want to discuss is what we do at the very, very end of a Haftarah portion. So if you know, when we chant the Ve'ahavta, okay, at the end of Ve'ahavta we do Al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha. It's chanted in Torah trope, but we have a very special ending melody signifying what's called Sof Aliyah, the end of the Aliyah. So the same is going to be true here, where we have a special melody, not necessarily for the end of an Aliyah, but for the end of a Haftarah portion. Okay? And it's going to be the same tropes as we have for Sof Pasuk, because as I mentioned, every single verse in Torah or Haftarah is going to end with a Sof Pasuk phrase. But instead of having the regular melody, we're going to have a special festive ending melody. It's going to be Mercha Tipcha Sof Pasuk. Okay? So I'm going to chant the last verse for you, and you're going to see how we end a Haftarah portion. Vayomer Yehonatan LeDavid Lech LeShalom Asher Nishbanu Sheneinu Anachnu B'Shem Adonai Leimor Adonai Yeh Beini Uveinecha Uvein Zar'i Uvein Zaracha Adolam. And that concludes concludes our Haftarah, and then we would go right into Baruch Atah Adonai, and so on and so forth, the blessing after the Haftarah. Okay, so that's how we chant Haftarah. We do the blessing before the Haftarah. We have our Haftarah portion chanted according to Haftarah Trope, and then we have our blessings after the Haftarah as well. So not quite enough to get you through every single Haftarah, but hopefully this is enough to get you well on your way. As always, if you have interest in studying this further on, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm always happy to help and provide support or send you the right resources that'll help you along as well. And it's been a real pleasure studying Trope with you. Once again, I wish you all a happy Yom Yerushalayim and wish you a wonderful, blessed Shabbat and a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you so much for joining us. Shabbat Shalom.